Greetings fellow pack members, my name is Podium and welcome to Kerbal Space Program. Now today I'm going to be showing you part 1 of the Minmus Mining Operation series. The whole point of this is to be able to set up a functioning mining base on the surface of Minmus, which would then be able to transfer all of the resources up to a station in Low Minmus Orbit, and then that would be able to transfer all of the resources over to another station which is currently in Low Kerbin Orbit, which unfortunately I ended up losing the footage for, especially since this was supposed to be for an entirely different project which ended up failing. So now, instead of using the station for its original purpose, I'm simply using it as a refuel station for any future missions which I may have, or simply for emergency refueling. Now here you're able to see the station which is currently in Low Minmus Orbit. This did take me a little while to go ahead and make, which again, I do apologize. The footage for all of these parts that you're seeing right now is currently lost, and along with all of the footage for the next station, which I'm going to show you here in just a bit. But as you can see, the station is fit to be able to take in resources and convert them into fuel into that tank right there. It's already equipped with solar panels and with the radiator panels, but I do plan on adding more this episode just so that you guys are able to see at least some of the finishing touches, so that way nothing is completely lost. And here you see the other station, which, like I said, the station was originally supposed to be used for an entirely different purpose. As you can see, I was able to capture an asteroid and dock it with the station. Right there you see all of those massive fuel tanks right there, which I ended up completely forgetting to turn off all of those engines, which I do apologize for. I'm just quickly doing that right now. But the whole purpose of this was to be able to mine all the resources from the asteroid, collect the fuel, and it was supposed to be a simple done project just like that. But unfortunately, what happened was that less fuel, or not enough resources came out of the asteroid. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. Not enough resources came out. I kind of ended up getting a little too confident with myself with how well this operation was going to be going with this particular asteroid. Obviously, it didn't end up working. The structure of the station itself is actually quite amazing. I was really happy to finally be able to get an asteroid caught, and then actually be able to have something to mine it with. Originally, it was just the top part, and then I was going to have a couple of ore tanks to the bottom of it, but unfortunately, like I said, it didn't really last long. I think I only got like 300 units of fuel out of a crap ton of resources, which I was able to have the station fit out for. So now we're going to go ahead and get started on one of the modules that we're going to be building to finish up the Minmus station, which is the electric module. Since the station is going to be using a lot of its energy resources to be able to convert all of the ore into fuel, I need to make sure that the station's able to basically power itself under stressful situations, one of them being, of course, converting a lot of ore into fuel, monopropellant, or even electricity if I really need it. But I've had issues in the past where I built stations beforehand and I just simply forgot how much energy they would end up taking. I forgot how much resources they would end up using, so I kind of ended up underestimating myself, and now I always find myself I usually overestimate myself, and now I'm underestimating myself. That's what I meant to say. I usually keep on trying to add more and more materials to all of my projects and everything else like that, just to make sure that I'm not running out of anything. I don't have to make any additional missions. I don't have to go ahead and perform any additional tasks, which would require for me to send up like an additional rocket just for emergency refueling or electricity in case one of the solar panels broke. Completely forget about it, and then whoops, I'm out of electricity. So I really don't want to run into a situation like that, so I'm trying to make sure that the station's going to be receiving plenty of power. And later into the series, I will be adding some cargo units to the station because I do want to make sure that if anything ends up breaking, I can repair it. I have not yet played around with the engineer Kerbals yet and repairing vehicles and stations, because most of the vehicles that I would end up making, I always kept on redoing over and over and over again, making small adjustments to make sure that they were able to go up into orbit in one go. Like for example here, I went ahead and made sure that this thing was definitely getting to orbit by adding the vector engines to the bottom of the boosters. I did make the unfortunate mistake of forgetting to undo the gimbal lock on here, so I had to do that for each and every single individual engine on each side. But I wanted to make sure that this thing was able to get up all in one go. I wouldn't have to redo any of it, because one of the most annoying things that I had to experience in this game was having to redesign a rocket over and over and over again until I eventually found out how the thing works. I still have to do that every now and then with some of the newer designs that I like to test out. This is a brand new design. I've never tried having boosters entirely made up of vector engines. I actually never really used the engine plates up until this series, when I was originally making the asteroid mining station, which is the one that I just showed you with the asteroid attached to it, obviously. But it is a learning process. It is a part of the game, and it really does brighten my mood when I'm able to go ahead and finally make something that actually works. It allows me to understand what I did wrong originally, and it's kind of embarrassing when I see somebody making the same mistakes that I do, because all I think about is everything that I've done wrong, all the attempts that I've made in the past to fix the issue and failed to do exactly just that. Now, of course, here you see me launching off of the Kerbal Space Center. The throttle had to be brought down halfway because I was going way too fast, and this was the first time I was using the boosters with the vector engines, and I was not expecting that much power, which honestly I should have, considering the fact that these guys are used on the a lot of like space shuttle recreations and stuff like that. I did end up losing connection when I ended up getting close to Minmus. For some reason, the antennas that I currently have in orbit around Minmus were not exactly working to their full potential, so I had to kind of do everything a little bit over and over and over again. So you're going to see me cut straight into doing the retrograde burn on Minmus, and then you're going to see me jumping just straight to the docking sequence. Now, I did eventually fix the entire relay issue after this mission specifically, I think it was, or it was the next mission afterwards. And by mission, I mean video. I mean, in like when part 2 comes up, I'll be able to go ahead and have the entire communication network entirely fixed. Recently, I have been kind of goofing off with building a better means of setting up satellites around in orbit. I ended up making a new ship, which I might just go ahead and test out as soon as I'm done with the entire series. I'll just go ahead and have probably a stream or just simply a separate episode of me setting everything up in orbit. But as of right now, the map that I have the satellite launcher on, it's working perfectly fine. And of course, here we are now finally docking to the station. This again took me a couple attempts because I wasn't exactly receiving any communication with the Kerbal Space Center, and this is a kind of a weird angle for me to be docking with the station. I had no idea why I was at this camera angle. Usually what I would do is I would set the camera angle to locked, so that way I'm able to actually take a look at where I am in reference to the vehicle itself, just so docking is a little bit easier and not just bouncing off of the entire vehicle itself. But now that's finally completed. And of course, you see me kind of screwing around with the solar panels. I ended up having issues with deploying them because everything was based off of the same action group. So while I was deploying one set, I ended up retracting another. And of course, just to go ahead and quickly edit the action group, I wanted to make sure that all of the radiators would be able to toggle in another action group, just so it's easier for me to deploy them and then undeploy them whenever I didn't need them, just to make life easier for myself. Now what you see me doing is making the crew module, which is interesting because you're also watching me making a crew capsule. This is actually supposed to be for the astronaut, which has been in charge of operating the entire station for the past few months now in Kerbal time. Months of Kerbal time. I believe it is considered months in Kerbal time. But I also want to add a quick little science module to the end of it, which I really wanted to do all in one single launch, but unfortunately I wasn't able to because of the weight of the rocket. I wanted to get this thing up into orbit as quickly as possible, get it done and over with, so I'm gonna take that science module off of there. I will be adding the science module at a later launch, but the whole purpose of this is not only being able to add a spot for the crew to be able to get in and out of, it's also supposed to allow the astronaut, which is in charge of the station, to simply return home because she has already served her time on the station, just to go ahead and keep on monitoring it, or I guess you say freaking English. I guess you can say just keeping an eye on it. I'm sorry about that. Keeping an eye on it until the crew is ready to get up there and take everything over. Wow, my English is not working today. And of course, I was gonna be doing the boosters that I did last time, but then I figured, hey, you know, if I'm making everything a little bit lighter, I'll just go ahead and simply use the solid fuel boosters. It will just allow me to have a little bit of a extra boost. I won't be using anything too major. I think I was debating whether or not I wanted to really do the boosters with the vector engines, but then I decided that it wasn't really necessary. So of course here now I'm trying to figure out a way to put the engines onto the vehicle that would allow me to kind of glide towards the station itself, just so that way I can have something else to maneuver around with the second I was done with the second? Was it the second stage or the third stage? I have no idea. But of course, with the crew modules, I'm adding the crew as well, just to send up there. And blast off. Like I said, I was debating whether or not I really wanted to go ahead and get the vector engine boosters going, but as you can see, I had to throttle down just to get everything done correctly. And now that we are in orbit, I was also relieved that I completely forgot that I wasn't using a probe. I kept thinking, oh boy, I'm gonna have to deal with me losing connection all over again. Then I forgot, hey, you know, you have a capsule attached to it. It's not a probe core or anything else like that. So I am still going to be skipping to when I end up going to Minmus, just so that way everything is done a little bit easier. And there we see our beautiful crew module readying itself up to go into orbit around Minmus, which is all the way over there. It looks like a little Death Star. And it's actually funny too, because the Mun is the one that looks like the Death Star. Every single time I see that coming over the horizon, all I see is the huge crater on the side of it, and I'm thinking, oh god, the Empire. And of course we just cut straight to where the station is. Now again, I wanted to use the engines, but I also realized that because of how close I was able to make it to the station, I didn't really need the engines. So of course, instead of using the engines the entire time, I was mostly using the monopropellant, which is kind of a waste of fuel, considering that I brought those engines up for just like a tiny little separation burn, which again I could have used simply with the monopropellant. I didn't really have to go ahead and do all of that work just to go ahead and bring the engines with me. And there go the boosters that I barely even used. Now I did learn my lesson after a while, because I stopped using all of that and started relying more off the monopropellant instead of trying to rely off the engines. And here I am back at the Minmus Mining Station. which of course you can see all the boosters in the background right over there, right where the cursor is. Once again, I have no idea why exactly I was trying to dock the vehicle simply like this. It just kind of looks weird now that I'm looking back at it, because I've always done it with the camera locked to the vehicle, so I know which way it's facing, so that way everything is kind of lined up without having me to readjust the docking ports like I originally had to. So of course now I'm going to go ahead and transfer all the crew into the station, get them the heck out of there. They're done. They can have some fun on the station, and then we're going to go ahead and bring our pilot off of the main deck of the station, and we're going to have her on her way. And in between takes, I decided that I would manually disengage the engines just so that way I can move myself away from the space station and not cause any overheating on the modules which I just delivered. And forgetting about this, I decided to press the space bar, not realizing that I had to do it manually all over again. Or completely forgetting that I disengaged it manually and that I had to do it manually in order for me to fix it. So I ended up getting frustrated to the point where I was like, you know what, let me see how much monopropellant I can go ahead and use just to maneuver the capsule over and over again. And then I tried attempting to dock with the station, which for some reason I have no idea why I thought this was going to work, because the radiator panel's on the way, and instead of wanting to switch to the vehicle all over again, I decided I would just take the Kerbal back out. She would have to stay on the station for a little while longer just so that we can go ahead and get a vehicle over. But unfortunately for this Kerbal, she has to stay a little while longer on the station. And then of course we're just going to go ahead and cut right to the vehicle, because I'm really upset about this. The fact that I screwed up so badly to the point where I left a Kerbal stranded for another 5-6 days. Sorry, 11 days. 11 days. Yikes. I would, if I was working on the station and realized that the staging was completely screwed up and that I did something manually instead of trying to fix it, manually, I tried doing it through the staging, I would have been completely pissed off. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave and then go straight back home. This time with the engine already activated, of course, so I no longer have to deal with the very same mistake that I had to deal with before. And before we go ahead and continue, I just want to go ahead and quickly show you the landing site, which, again, I ended up losing the footage for, which I'm really upset about, because I was able to do the whole Martian rover landing recreation and stuff like that. Of course, this isn't the Mars rover. This is an entirely different rover, which is supposed to allow me to communicate with one of the satellites, which is currently surveying the entire surface of Minmus, which is supposed to allow me to figure out where exactly one of the largest ore deposits is. And of course, the rover is sitting right on top of it, along with a flag, which, again, I unfortunately ended up losing all of that footage for, but this was able to pinpoint exactly where I would be able to put the base down, because I really needed to figure out exactly where I was going to be mining. Now, back at the Kerbal Space Center, it is time to create the science module. Now, I was going to be doing this with the probe this time, because I really did not want to have that whole issue with the command module all over again. So instead of simply adding a smaller antenna, I ended up adding a bigger one, just so that way the station was also able to have a means of communication with the Kerbal Space Center, and that any vehicle that would get close within the proximity of the station, they would also be able to have communication with the Kerbal Space Center, because the station could act as a giant communication antenna. And of course I was wondering where exactly I was going to be putting it, so I decided to add one of the structural supports to the module. And even though I'm not exactly planning on doing much science, or really that much any science with the science module, it's really just to kind of be an addition to the space station, where it would make the station look a little better. It's simply there for decoration, if you want to put it that way. It's mostly just there just so that way I can have like an actual science module that the crew can add different experiments to. Like I said, I will be adding a cargo module to the station towards the end of the series. So I guess with the cargo module I could also end up adding like all the science equipment and stuff like that, like the mystery goo or the thermometers and stuff like that. Ooh, excuse me. I I have no idea why I ended up adding these boosters to the vehicle anyways, because the science module is actually a lot lighter than the module that I just sent up, because it's simply just the science module with a structural support and then the antenna and of course your usual monopropellant. So I guess I was just kind of experimenting with the boosters, so that way I was able to figure out exactly what it is I really wanted to work with throughout the series, you know, whatever exactly worked. Never really played around with calculating thrust to weight ratio and stuff like that, so most of the engines are either overpowered or underpowered and so on and so forth. And immediately to launch, which ended up glitching a lot, which is why I zoomed past all of that. I know that was quite sudden, but the entire launch was very, very glitchy, and that was like the best way that you could see it launch. And then of course we're just going to go ahead and cut straight to the docking point. Again, the camera angle. I have no idea why. Of course I didn't bounce off of it this time, so I was happy about that, but still, I have no idea what I was doing with the camera angle. But now, of course, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that little tank right there. I no longer need it. Again, extra fuel, which I just ended up wasting. Could have transferred over to the vehicle, or to the rest of the station, sorry. But as of right now, the station is currently complete until I'm able to add all of the additional cargo modules to it, any additional parts which I would like to add, and of course the vehicle's sending up all of the resources. And then of course what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be recreating the science module, or I guess you could say not recreating, repurposing it. Thank you. I was going to go ahead and work entirely off of that design, but then I figured, hey, it's a ground module. I might as well just go ahead and add a bit more to it. Obviously, it's going to be needing landing legs, but I wanted to go ahead and research some of the materials that are on the surface of Minmus just a little bit further. So I was going to go ahead and not only add the antenna, just so that way, again, any vehicle that got close enough to Minmus, they would be able to go ahead and keep in contact with the Kerbal Space Center. I wanted to go ahead and add the ore modules, so that way I was able to do a little bit of mining, or light mining, as I would really put it, compared to the vehicles that I ended up making. Just so that way I was able to, again, see how much I was actually able to get from the surface of Minmus, because if I landed in an area that was able to get enough ore in lower quantities, but in the long term it wasn't sufficient enough, then I needed to make sure that that I can move the area that I was in, or if I had to redesign the entire vehicle itself, which was going to be mining the resources from the surface, I could just simply make it so that way it would be a little bit more efficient, or reposition it so that way the area that I was landing in would be simply more beneficial for the entire operation in itself. And of course I added the convertitron right there, just so that way I was able to see how fast the vehicle was able to convert all the ore resources into fuel, just to make life ever so sweeter. Now for a little while I was planning on adding the like a hitchhiker module, just so that way the Kerbals that we're currently mining on the surface had a little break room or something like that, just so that way they were able to kind of get out and enjoy gravity a little bit from a different angle instead of sitting there simply waiting for the vehicle to load, almost like a truck driver. Instead of waiting for a couple hours, they would be waiting for several days. So it would just be like a little spot for them to have something to do. But then I was like, yeah, nah, I'm not adding that much weight to the vehicle itself. Not worth it. Now, again, I was dealing with the same exact issues that I was dealing with before, where I kept on losing communication, and of course the launch was glitchy, so I just kind of cut straight to this point right here. The landing actually ended up taking me 2 attempts. I had to go back several times because one, I ended up going in a little too fast, and then the second time I ended up spinning out, like you were just able to see right there, and it ended up glitching the entire vehicle to the point where I simply started going off out of Kerbin's sphere of influence, which really annoyed me, so I had to redo the entire thing all over again and land as gently as possible, doing almost no more than 3 meters per second just to make sure that everything was being done perfectly fine. And of course I did add a few more engines just to the bottom of the entire module, so that way I was able to go ahead and get everything landing perfectly fine. And because of exactly where I landed, I had to move the vehicle a little bit closer to the flag, just so that way my accuracy for mining would be a little bit better. And I did not account for the deployment of the drill compared to the size of the landing legs. Wow, English is not really my favorite today. So I ended up mining it anyways, or mining the area anyways, or just so that way I can see how much I would end up getting. Over time, I realized that I wasn't really getting a lot, but if I was to go ahead and speed up time to a certain extent, the ore intake would speed up a little bit past as to where exactly it was supposed to be going. And I also wanted to make sure that this thing was able to mine overnight, just to see how much electricity I really needed to end up taking off or putting onto the vehicle. And of course, this thing was able to last overnight without any issues whatsoever, completely allowing me to have everything done in no time. So I don't have to worry about adding a vehicle with even more electricity or less electricity. This was just done perfectly fine. And of course, that's going to be it today for part 1 of the Minmus Mining Operation. I will do my best to get another episode done before the end of February. Actually, I wish I can get 2 episodes done before the end of February, because I need to be able to do the 100th video that I've ever posted on YouTube. I've done one beforehand, but I ended up deleting a whole bunch of videos, so technically it wouldn't have counted. But I do plan on posting that real soon, and then getting another video or 2 of the Minmus Mining Operation series done before the end of February, because at the end of February, Kerbal Space Program 2 will be released, and I do wish to go ahead and record some footage of that and then get some videos done on that exact day. The second that it's released, I am recording and I am posting. But like I said, that's going to be it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will see all of you in the next video. Bye bye.